Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Welcome everybody. I'm gonna steer through this session today. So welcome to the third of our sense-making calls for the Whitepaper community. I think we have a lot of people who have been following the process, maybe some newcomers, we will see in a moment. So let me start by just giving an overview of the agenda for today. So we have geared up with a little bit more teammates to manage different parts of the call. So first we will have a warm-up that Guillermo will lead so that we get everyone's names and who is in the call. Then we will go through a framing presentation where first Simone will talk us through some of the main ideas that have come out lately. We also shared with you some of the key ideas in the agenda and also in the latest research update, and hopefully most of you are following the podcast and so on. So these are some of the emerging topics that we want to have a conversation on today. And then we will also provide you some other updates on ideas that we have, but that we want to collect your inputs on different opportunities to contribute and to be involved in the conversation in different ways. After we have done some talking, we will have two blocks. One will be to have conversations. So we really want to have more on the conceptual level. We want to give some space to exchange ideas, and we know that there are many rich and diverse talents in this group. So this is more or less an open session. The second one is a little bit more practical. So we will, based on the framing presentation, we will work a little bit with you on these ideas of how you could contribute to the process and try to refine and collect your input so that we can structure it a bit more. So that's it. I think what we will do is that we want to share the link to the Miro board. If I can please ask in the chat so that everyone can at least view it.
Yeah, before of sharing the link, I just take the control of the screen so that I can show you where to land once you get into the link. So once you enter into the link, so once you click on the link from Miro board, you have to find this space where I am now. If you need to find me, just look for my face here, and when you click on my face, you will arrive here. So now, for example, if I click on the face of Elena, I will go where Elena is. And now, but I need, of course, to stay on the other place. So I'm here and waiting for you. Here is the link on the chat, and welcome. I wait for you. Okay, I can see that people are joining. Okay, I see Rodrigo is here around. Marc Anton is here around.
So for the person who just joined, Sparos, we are moving to the Miro board where we will have a warm-up and introduce ourselves. So please follow the link in the chat and click on the purple man on top to find where we are.
So the warm-up is quite easy. Since we are quite a lot, we will make it in a simplified version. So I'm asking to you just to take, to duplicate this yellow post-it and write inside what is your name and what is your job. And then move it close to your favorite chair. So let's give ourselves 3 minutes to do it. I will also set up a little bit the timer, just because we don't want to take it so much time. Even 2 minutes. Oh, after I choose the ugliest chair ever. I put myself on the couch, so maybe someone will join me.
Link in Telegram, yes.
So still 1.5 minutes. Here is the link again. Okay, 50 seconds. Take your favorite chair before the other will take it. Yeah, actually, Rodrigo, you stole mine. That was my favorite. Twenty seconds. Okay. Here we are. Close. Perfect. So we simply go introduce ourselves, reading the post-it, and saying why we choose that chair instead of another. So we start by myself, and then I will pass the word to Marc Anthony. So I'm Guillermo, facilitator Boundaryless and designer as trainer. So I study design. And I choose the couch because I was wondering if someone also would like to share the couch, but it didn't happen. So, Marc Anthony, to you.
Marc-Antoine Parent, founder at Conversance. I work on the Collective Intelligence Tool, Idealoom, and others, and Hyperknowledge, and various processes. And I choose the cushion because I'm a meditator otherwise. So I'm often on a cushion.
Great. Thank you. Lucia.
Hi, my name is Lucia. I'm part of the team of Boundaryless. I have no space to put all my job description because it's too much in order to put it in a post-it. And I choose this chair because it was like an elegant, and yeah, it is like I felt like a lady.
Great. I can see that Elena and David are sharing a chair. So you never came to my couch, but you're sharing a small chair.
Actually, I would choose the couch, but then I saw your name and then I moved it. So I thought, and I didn't see the name. Sorry. It's like sharing is caring. I'm Elena. I'm working at the moment. I'm in the production of the podcast for Boundaryless. Choose this armchair because I think it was very comfortable, and it's normally the way how I listen to podcasts.
Great. David.
Yeah, I'm Dave Kish. I'm an ecosystem advisor currently working with Tata Consultancy Services. And I chose this chair just because it looked very comfortable, but now that I'm seeing the lawn chair with the umbrella, that looks pretty inviting as well.
Yes. So speaking about the umbrella, Rodrigo?
I'm Rodrigo. I'm also part of the team of Boundaryless, and I'm a designer and facilitator. And I choose this chair because actually I went to the beach this morning for running, and actually the beach is opening, and that felt really great. And that's a nice reminder.
Thanks. Jerome?
Hi, Jeroen. I'm a product owner of Platform Innovation Service at Segeka, and I choose this chair because it's a nice design, but mainly because there seems to be a cocktail in the armchair.
Great. It's still Friday. So. Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle Stanko. Actually work at the same company as Dave Kish. I do consulting work in both the blockchain space, and that got me into what we call ecosystem consulting. PBT kind of flips that as platform consulting a bit. But I picked that chair because I felt like a sticky note just fit really well in it. So it was a good fit for my sticky.
Okay, yes, thank you. Ivan? Ivan. If you're speaking, maybe Ivan, you are in mute, or maybe Ivan, okay. Unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm Ivan. I am a biologist, and I collaborate with different non-profit organizations and also make some consultant.
Perfect,
And
thank you.
I choose sofa because it's my natural habitat these days.
Stephen.
Yeah, Stephen P. Anderson, designer, facilitator, recently founded the Mighty Minds Club, which is to help a community to help product teams work through difficult situations. And just look at that chair. That's like 1960s style all over it. So I couldn't resist the egg chair.
Right, definitely. Stina, I would never expect you on this chair, but tell us
Really?
why.
Yeah, well, I thought it looked like, so I'm Stina. I'm working on, as you know, the research for the white paper and with Boundaryless. I put policy analyst because it's something that closest to the title that I've had also in my previous work, more with international organizations and the policy. And I chose this chair because it looks like a massage chair, one of those old, like with a remote control, and I felt like that would be nice after this week.
Okay. It looks for me like a car chair, like one of these.
No, yeah, maybe.
Saba. Saba, maybe.
You hear me? Hello?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good afternoon to everybody. I'm struggling a little bit, so I got to this chair only. I'm representing the food and beverage sector in this call, and I have as well a CEO position in one of the organizations. So happy to join you first time today.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome, Saba. Greg?
Hi, Greg Sherwin, engineer, but a budding designer. I try not to be one thing. Of most of my work with Farfetch, but I've worked with a number of ecosystems to find broader interest than even just my day job. So,
Thank you very much. Luca?
Hello everyone. I'm Luca from Boundaryless, and I just picked this chair because one of the last available. But I like this because it's actually like my, you see, real chair. So I'm living here since 2 months, more or less, 15 hours a day. So it's my home.
Thank you. We have Renzo.
Hello, everybody. Currently working on the case study for the white paper common stack. So I work on the ecosystem research and the strategy, and I chose this chair because it's exactly the same I have at home. Unfortunately, I'm not sitting on that chair now, so I kind of miss it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Renzo. Giulia, you are in 2 chairs. One is the same of Simone, so tell us why.
I apologize. I wanted the high chair. I'm a consultant. I am a long time acquaintance with the Boundaryless team, at least 2 years now, and I am a consultant in the financial services technology sector, but also a philosopher, and in transitioning to a more strategic role. And I choose the high chair because I want to look far and I want to see what is beyond.
Great. Thank you very much. Simone.
I apologize for this.
Oh, don't worry.
Hello, everyone. I'm Simone, co-founder of Boundaryless and as a self-defined carpenter of design. And I choose this comfy armchair because this has been a very tough and full week. So I'm looking forward to relax a little bit, and that's it.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
I think that's all, right?
Yeah, so whenever you need to remember who is who, check the right chairs. I pass you the
Yeah, I think I would try to maybe share my screen because it seems difficult to navigate through another. And if my bandwidth.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that my bandwidth is.
Bandwidth.
Bandwidth problem,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
cutting the video was a good idea.
Does it work?
You can I can share my screen and I will follow you because there is new function of mirror. Shall I share the mirror board or
the presentation?
The presentation. No, the presentation. Elena, can you share the presentation since I don't have it open?
Yeah, and you can just move it, Elena. I'll tell you when to move it. Sorry about that. So if we can go back to the agenda. So that now we've done the warm up. So like I was mentioning, we're going to have a talk through of the recent research by Simone. And if you want to just take down some notes or keep in mind a little bit what he's saying, that we'll come back to in the block, on the conversational block later on, and then we will share some news with you that are more on the practical side. So I would say that without further ado, we pass on to Simone and sharpen our thinking cells.
Yeah, I will try to be very fast because the warm up took a little bit more than we planned. So let's try to save some time. So you know that we are approaching this research in a very open and transparent and co-creative and probably not enough yet co-creative, but very open way. So we're looking forward to have a more collective and co-creative research in the future, and that's also part of the conversation we're going to have today. But when we look into the research so far, I would say our research has been heavily based on conversations. So so far we've been talking with more than 10 thought leaders, and every 2 weeks we consolidate our most of our insights into periodic updates that collect not just interviews that we do on our own, but also sometimes podcasts or pieces that other people are producing. So as it was in this case this week, we have selected four major insights that you can find in our latest research update called From the Information Age to Sense-Making Organizations. And I think when I started from the first highlight, we currently at an inflection point. I think we connected essentially two things. One very interesting podcast that we have listened to that was featuring Rita McGrath, that you probably know. It's a legend of management theory. She wrote this book a few years ago called The End of The End of Competitive Advantage. There was a landmark in explaining essentially that continuous change is driving challenges for organizations, and she was talking about the moment we are living, and she made up this two-dimensional schema, let's say mental schema, where she talked about what's gonna happen after the COVID, and she pictured these four possibilities, by crossing the possibility that we have an economic rebound or not, not, or if we draw a new social compact, as she spoke about. And by crossing up these these two dimensions, you end up with these four potential scenarios that she called, as you can see in the picture, Society 2.0, Rendezvous with Destiny, quoting, the Big Depression essentially, and Roosevelt's actions, let's say, and Les Miserables, to speak instead of the possibility that we don't have any prolonged any rebound, and we end up in a prolonged economic crisis, and we don't change the social compact. And that was funny, rinse and repeat, just that we got a V-shaped economic rebound, and just everything continues as usual. So that was a very interesting starting point for me, while I connected these with we connected these with some other frameworks that we are considering now in terms of trying to frame the situation we are in at a civilization and social level. And so the big question I think that we wanted to talk about when we spoke about inflection point is to try to understand if the moment we are living now is really special, or is more part of a cyclic evolutionary patterns that we have already seen in human civilization. So the question is the moment we are living in something special, something really different that should push us to be considered like that? So that was point number one. I will try to be faster on the others. The second one was a point on process-based thinking applied to organizational transformation and emergence. And this was largely based on an interview we had with Indy Johar, and that is coming up on Tuesday, and that you really want to listen to. I'm really, making a point that you have to, because it's amazing. And we had this discussion, especially on thinking about change in organizing, and we figured out that probably existing institutions need to approach institutional reinvention more from a process perspective, so more from the perspective of creating conditions for new institutions to emerge, instead of trying to design them top down. So that's the second point that we want to discuss in the breakout rooms later. The third one was still very much inspired by a conversation we had with Indy, and it was about this idea to essentially create what Indy called the reflective spaces. So he made the point, for example, about cities. Our cities, he said, they are designed for transactions. They're never designed to create spaces for reflections. And we also connected this in the podcast with the idea that a lot of the narrative of organizational transformation these days is related to the idea that you can transform bureaucracy into technology. And the question is that when you transform bureaucracy into technology tends to be exponential, and you tend to lose control of it because human capabilities cannot deal with exponential change. So the big question that we want to discuss on the point number 3 is probably is a way, somehow intentionally creating reflective spaces and reflective organization part of creating organization that can deal with complexity and don't end up with this bureaucratic failure of not being able to respond to change. So that's the number 3, the point number 3. And point number 4 was very much inspired by the conversation we had with Daniel Christian Wall, that as you know, is a champion of regenerative cultures and thinking. And this is one of the key, I think, one of the leading points that are emerging in our new, in our way to exploration, let's say, into the new ways of framing organizations. And as you know, we have been taught for decades, and there is this book from Joe Pine that is very famous, about the experience economy. I think it's from the end of the 90s, so more or less the last 20 years. We have been taught that organizations emerge and structure themselves in a way that so that they can serve the customer, and creating these exceptional organizations for experiences for the customers. And one of the things that is coming up at the moment, especially I think also in the COVID context, is that we feel like that there is a transition, and many risks that we are seeing emerging are pushing us to see health, systemic health, as the driving paradigm for designing and developing organizations. And when we speak about systemic health, we're just acknowledging the fact that health is a property of nested systems. It's not a property of individuals in a system. It's property that depends from the interactions between the several holons, let's say, that are overlapped. No, the human, the organization, the system, the environment, the nature, and the cosmos at the end of the day. So those are the 4 points that I think we want to discuss later on today in the breakout rooms. I hope I wasn't too long.
No, that's great. So I think what we wanted to really provide is we have this high level meta layer of what we feel is coming out from the research that Simone was just saying. And then before jumping into, discussing that together in separate groups, we wanted to introduce some ideas of that we have had regarding this process and regarding Boundaryless itself. So asking yourself, how can we be more open? How can we become to learn from the ecosystem? How can we create channels where people can engage? Because this process is, we are learning as we go, and we have invited different ways of contributing, and we are trying to understand together with you and with the community on how this different can work. So one idea is this idea of B-sides, that we have realized that the first reaction of some people is B-sides is like some kind of B-league. It's the people who are not in the A series, but in the B series, and which is not at all what drove this name. But if everyone, I won't claim that I've been a big listener of vinyl records, but the idea is that the B-side is what you find, the undiscovered tracks that are not the mainstream on the chart, that are these things that have, can awaken a lot of curiosity and make you discover the hidden diamonds, let's say. So that's the conceptual frame. Then we can also discuss about the name, but just so that everyone is clear that this is the thinking behind it. So as you know, we have launched some new channels. We have also, we have our blog that is the most robust and long-lived channel of communication and new articles, and more recently the podcast. And we also have a YouTube channel that maybe you're not everyone is aware, but where we host different webinars with adopters and sometimes on different topics. And now we are thinking, how do we create something like a B-sides in the sense that I just described out of these channels? So how can we have people contribute to the blog with things that are tangent to the editorial line that we have and that can add value? And how can we do that with other channels? Could there be like a B-side of the podcast which explores ideas that are not entirely in the line that we thought, but might be a blind spot, or and on the YouTube channel, how we're thinking about how we could have, for instance, panel discussions. And this is already something that we are trying to set up in the research, to have specific focus sessions on a theme that goes beyond our current exploration, but deep dives into a topic like education, or maybe regeneration, or decentralized autonomous organizations and things like that. So in the last session of today, we want to explore these ideas more together. Like, what could the process be? And we have put some preliminary ideas, but we come back to this in a while. But it's just really to mention that this is as a reflection of this. How do we create these reflective spaces, basically, together with you? So now I will hand over to another important aspect of this, which is the sense-making event that some of you have already expressed interest in working on, and so on, and which we are now advancing a bit in the thinking.
Okay, I think I will start a little bit with speaking about the sense-making event. So here with what we're thinking is going to be like the date, like having like a one day of sense-making event where we want to improve our intuition on the most pressing challenge of the future by identifying new patterns. We found out a kind of a stream that we have it here on this small diagram, and basically it's connecting insights and inspirational talk, inspirational thoughts into exploring sessions, and out of this session then we can come out with intuition about the future scenarios. Just like it's a new icon that I was waiting for a different one, so I cannot see properly it, but then I will ask you maybe, Elena, to go a little bit deeper on this. So again, the main steps are like on Monday, 20th of July, there will be like the draft release of the white paper. So we are like few days in order to make up our mind and go through the sense making Healing Day, where we will have mainly interesting speakers that will give like foresights and giving us inspiring session. And on the other side, we will work like in small teams, elaborating these inputs and create and coming out with tools in order to navigate, tools, actions, and suggestions in order to navigate the future, the uncertain future that we have in front. This is why this is reflecting like a passage that we were thinking about, that what is making our intuition to improve. And so we thought about this circle, these like steps that is what is enabling us to see the foresight, taking some tools to work on it and going on toward that. In order then to arrive to the release of the white paper in October 2020. I don't know.
If I can add one thing, it's like apart from like the team that is made by the four of us, Stina, Rodrigo, Guillermo, and myself, it was like we were thinking more about like a sort of a hero journey where we start from one point from like our base knowledge on something, and during this journey we discover actually more things, and we added it to our backpack, right? And so to come back to the same position but changed. So that was mainly like a sort of like an enrichment journey that we want to create. Yeah.
Thank you a lot, Elena.
Yes, if I can add just one bit, very small. We previously were aiming for the event to happen on June 30, as you may have noticed. And we were also aiming to release the paper a little bit before October. But what happened, and I think for those of you that have read the research update, it's something that you have also noticed, is that the more we research, the more we believe that we don't want to converge too early. And so we basically decided to take a little bit more time. And, we hope that, and of course we are talking about an online event. This maybe wasn't clear to everyone, but we're talking about an online event. Everything now is defaulting to online. So we hope that July 20 will be still, even if we know that it's going to be probably the cool part of the summer, but we believe that it will be great to spend the day together with us, Elena and Guillermo said, with inspiring contributors of this research. So the speakers will be people that already contributed to our sense-making process, and these sessions that we want to organize, and I really hope that you will enjoy these as we hope. So thanks. And sorry, I just wanted to add this detail on the date, because it was important to explain why we are postponing a little bit everything.
And again, so we will come back to the people who have reached out to express interest in engaging on this, but we needed to form a little bit our core team first and understand the timeline and how things will work. So before we go into the topical conversations, we still have a small reminder that we always want to also make, that we are, like Simone said, we are trying to build this research in a very open way, and our ambition is to keep everything open source, and the research and the contents as open as possible. So that's why we have, if you're not aware, we have this early adopters and explorers kit on the website. If anyone is in a position to support, we are very grateful. Having said that,
maybe we can also add that this relates with the event to some extent. So we want to give those that decide to support the research will have some. Let's say that the event we want to keep it as open as possible. So most likely we will be open to everyone. We're gonna decide this in the coming weeks. But those that become early adopters will have some advanced, let's say, opportunity to participate to this event in some kind of more interactive way. We're still thinking about that, but most likely we mean by influencing that in the design phase and by participating to some additional sense-making session after the event, where, for example, some of the tools that we create during the event will be consolidated and tested together. So that's the idea of becoming an early adopter, because the event is going to contribute in terms of how do we operationalize this knowledge into making us more sovereign in certain sense. So that's more or less the sense of becoming an early adopter.
Thank you. Yeah, so now we've gone through this first part, and we want to invite you to, I think we can manage that people might have a preference for a topic. So the way that it will work is that we didn't decide beforehand if we would choose or get chosen, because we didn't know how many participants. But since we are 23, that should be fine. So the way it will work is that everyone will choose the topic that they feel like they want to have a conversation about by putting the number in the chat. And then we will assign the breakout rooms according to that. There will be one facilitator from Boundaryless in each room, and to help you guide the conversation. And on the Miro board that we were using for the warm-up, there are also the guiding questions.
Hello.
Welcome back to everybody. Sorry for being so unpolite and send you directly without notice back to the main room.
Okay. Good. So we are quite a little bit behind the schedule as expected, but I thought it was important to have a bit longer conversation. That's also the feedback that we got after last time, and they still felt quite short. I don't know how you experienced it, but we had more or less over 20 minutes, so +5, so we had more than last time, but maybe we would have needed even more.
That was great. So thanks very much, everybody. Stina, now you need to steer this faster, no? Because we don't have time.
No, but I was just saying I thought it was important to not cut too much in this part, and probably we do a bit faster in the next one, and that would be the priority, because we got the feedback also from last time that people want to engage in conversations. So hopefully you did, even if it was still a bit rushed. So we wanted to make like a tour of a little bit what you captured in these three, in the highlights and the blind spots and the new question that emerged from your conversations.
Yeah, let's go fast and
so I guess I can start.
Yeah.
Because I was in the conversation group number 1 with
Should I share the screen, Stina?
No, I think I can just talk. There's not very much visual to share at this stage. So we were talking about this inflection point, and what is it that we are witnessing, and what do we think is important? And I think the highlight that we had is this idea of the collective consciousness shift. So we are in a struggle between this fear and the negativity bias and a need to see a different future. And we have a very hard time to do so. So I think the challenges and the blind spots that we were saying is that we don't really know how to paint the future with so much uncertainty. And it's something that we have to learn more and more to live with this kind of uncertainty. And one thing that Greg was saying that I just at the end before we broke up was that when thinking about this blind spot is that we have now a lot of ideas of how things might be, but they are very hard to codify. So I think that was a very great insight. That's what we're struggling with in this moment in time. And one of the questions that emerged was, how do we do that? How can we become more comfortable with a future that is very uncertain? So if anyone wants to add from the group, there was Pelle and Greg. Feel free to add a couple of words very quickly.
No, in the sake of time, I think you captured it well. I think getting precision out of a 25-minute discussion is pretty hard, so that was good.
So group 2.
Okay, that was us. It was very interesting because we started with this idea of process thinking. So first of all, we spent some time trying to, I don't want to say agreeing, because like with any word, there's many ways that you can interpret. But basically, I think the highlights of the conversation is that if we want to design for ecosystem, we may want to design the conditions instead of the outcomes. And to some extent, this means that we need to be able to deal with unexpected results. And this, I think my feeling is also that this completely challenges the very approach to design that we are used to. So designing for the unexpected without knowing what the outcomes will be. Also another conversation was about focusing on flows and not outputs. So trying to see things always in the flow of events, for example, that brought them into life. Then the blind spots was interesting because one thing that we figured out is that with this idea of designing in adopting this process of thinking and this conditions focused thinking, the problem is that we as humans and our organizations have a lifespan that normally prevents them to think in long term. So thinking in long term to some extent is very counterintuitive for individuals and for limited organizations, let's say, bounded organizations. And so the questions that arised after this long conversation was, for example, is process thinking how ecosystems think? Then also, what are the characteristics of the situations, and what are the barriers that prevent people to think in terms of long-term processes? And we also questioned that culture is maybe the underlying process of somehow dictating how we think also organizations. So that was for me the highlight of the conversation. And again, if somebody wants to add very quickly some considerations, I would love to. Otherwise, we can move to group 3. Okay, let's go. Number 3.
Marcantonio, I think you are the person, the right person to.
I'll be happy to. Well, one thing that came up a lot is the notion of suspending judgment. If we're going to have, it does tie to the ecosystem point. If we're going to allow for the unexpected, we also allow for failure and for things that don't work out as expected. And we need at any scale, we need to have a space where we suspend this goal-directedness. So we allow diversity, cross-scale, cross-silo, cross-tribal communication, cross-tribal thinking, attempts that may fail, listening, and take all that, incorporate it into the feedback loop for the next decisions. Something else that's also very important is this doesn't work unless the decision process for the goal-directed thinking is very, very explicit and transparent. And making things explicit and transparent takes time. But it is necessary if we're going to first allow this communication to happen, this examination and reflection on whatever process is to happen. So separating this space, and the question was raised, and it's a very important question, is the organization the best space where this reflection, this suspending of goal-directedness can happen? Because an organization is a fixed pattern. It's threatened by change, by anything that disturbs the pattern. But I think the ecosystem thinking is, again, about allowing many experiments to thrive in a larger ecosystem, which is resilient because small things can fail. Is there anybody who wants to add something I missed?
Yeah, maybe highlighting that the last question, that you said, that is the organization the right place to create reflective space, is a tricky question, because it included the things the change of point of view of what organization is, of course. So if we think about boundaries organization, of course, this question changed its shapes. So this is why I like a lot this question, because it's just an excuse to go further and to think about behind the organization itself. Anyone else want to add from our team, or we can go on to the team 4? Team 4. Team number 4, someone want to? Team number 4, sorry. About the topic number 4?
Okay. So actually was very interesting, the conversation too. And we started actually trying to agree on what this healthy means for the ecosystem, and understanding if it's the healthy ecosystem or if it's the healthy individual in the ecosystem. And we have 2 different points of views on this, on where the ecosystem can cascade to the individual, or we actually, that was rephrased by Luca as saying that actually COVID exposed that we need to take care of the individual too. So we need to put this in 2 different frames. Maybe at this short term to medium term, we need to take care of the worker, and then we can think on the medium to long term to a more healthy ecosystem, a more regenerative way to create platforms on ecosystem, right? And we also pass a little bit through examples on where the UX thinking is creating more resilient communities, where the technology is helping to build this resilience with people, or taking a good result from a local case to be replicated in different territories. And what else? I don't know if I'm missing something, or how the technology can help to transform everybody in an activist for this changing that needs to happen, right? I don't know if someone has something that I missed from the discussion.
Yeah, I think, Rodrigo, you mentioned pretty much everything. I think we also put in a conversation how permaculture could be an example as a landscape where this scenario could play a role to create an healthy ecosystem. And yeah, that was the only addiction.
Yeah, very, very quick thing, no? Because I think it was very important and open-minded. I like the parallel with the permaculture, no? But the key question that then we start discussing about is, about permaculture, we have a virtuous model, that is the nature. And we know that if we don't touch nature, probably nature will do the best thing. But when coming to human system, so we don't have this model. So we can't say that we need not to touch human system and let them do whatever they want, because we don't know yet, or either maybe we know that they will evolve into industrial military complex and capitalism, and so the toxic circle. So this was the most important open question in my opinion that needs to be answered.
Simone, do you want to offer like some reflection on this?
Well,
overall?
just one quick one, because I was trying to connect some aspects, and I think that we have some recurring talking about this idea of overcoming this idea of goal directedness. This is coming up a few times, and this idea of suspended judgment. I like it very much because it connects with some of the things that we have been encountering in the research. For example, I'm thinking about, I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of the rule omega, that is this epistemological approach to essentially Socratic conversations, so dialogic conversations, and to some extent to me resonates with this idea of suspended judgment, so to be able to stay within the trouble, as somebody else has said, so this idea that to really design a new organization, so we need to be able to overcome our traditional ways of thinking and our traditional ways of framing outcomes, framing objectives. So this is really what I bring home, is that this is a really massive epistemological challenge for us to overcome if we really want to design the organizations of the future. And a lot of this deals with, as I said, being able to look beyond this idea of outcomes. This is something that is coming up in a few groups, and I think it's really interesting to underscore.
I'm just going to do some adjustment announcements. So clearly, we won't have time to do the breakout rooms for the second lesson. So we will use some time just to do a collective brainstorming. But we could maybe leave another couple of minutes if someone else wants to make a remark, and then we will go into, practically speaking, how can we engage further in these different conversations. So that's my proposal.
Can I?
Go ahead.
when we're speaking about suspending a judgment, and I agree totally, it's about making experiments, and it came from someone else also. It's about making experiments and being not afraid to fail, but it's also about a lot of dissemination. And I did like the parallel with biology, because dissemination of results of all these experiments is what enables the learning. So having ways to communicate, and I spoke about transparency, making things explicit in terms of experiments, results, what worked, what didn't work. The information sharing is key for this to scale up and to go beyond local experiments to learning from all those local experiments. And yeah, what the ecosystem does well is local failure does not lead to global failure. But it's true that replication is a key aspect of that.
Yeah, nature has, for sure, nature has a suspended judgment on outcomes.
And if I may, maybe this also will link us well into the next conversation, which is about our B-sides, no? So we presented you with some preliminary ideas, and I don't know if you recall, if we can put back the slide, maybe. Ah, okay. Yeah. So basically now we were thinking about going more into deep here, but I mean, this was a great conversation that we had on the topic, so that's really important. What we want to do now is to open up here in plenary instead, to see if, maybe we can go back to the previous slide. It's probably easier, the one that was showing also the channels. So the first thing that we want to see is, these are our ideas, and we already have been, talking to some people who have showed interest, like David and Daniele, who are, as probably no one has missed, are writing a lot of contents on linking platform design toolkit with the spiral dynamics. We've also done a side experiment with Atma Katoan, using his tool IdeaLoom to see how that could work for drawing collective insights and so on. So now we wanted to open up for more like a collective brainstorming. So based on these ideas, how do you see this? And is there anything else that pops to mind in terms of contributions?
Stina, maybe I want to add a couple of words on this, because I didn't do before.
Yeah.
So the idea of the B-sides, as Stina has said, it wasn't as we said, to say B-league. It's really about this idea of B-sides as in recordings. So the idea that to some extent the B-side is a little less editorial. In terms of control on the topics, for example, or control on the style of the conversation and so on. So it's a little bit more open space. Still, we believe it needs to be a bit collectively edited, because we want to somehow have a bit of coherence in the conversation that we are facilitating. But very much the idea is to put the tools and the knowledge that we have in service of the community. So, for example, those that want to do videos or side podcasting or blogs can use our publication, of course, after a little bit of editing, our publication, our channels. So the question is really about putting the tools that we have in service of broader conversation. So that's the idea. It's really about putting the tools in service of potential new conversations that can emerge from the community.
So, yeah, thanks. So the invitations are twofold. Is one, to see if there is anything else that comes to mind in terms of contents, in terms of channels, but we don't have to force it, so we can also just go with the ones that we have identified. So for example, writing a blog post for the B-side stories, or doing this kind of panel discussion in a video format, or some kind of audio interview. so maybe if we can start with just having, like, you can take 1 minute to think for yourself, but then we would like to have a round to see, you know, some expression of interest, to see, yeah, I would be interested in this kind of format, or, you know, so now we're talking about the format, and then in the second step we will go into more the process and try to collect some of your ideas on how we can work out the sort of editorial process for this. So I would just invite everyone to take yeah, maybe 30 seconds to think for yourself, and then we open for anyone who wants to give some ideas on this. And maybe someone like, I don't know if David is still here, but could also share, you know, what you have been talking to us and what you have been writing and so on. This.
Yeah, I can share a little bit. So in terms
just,
of
just maybe if we just have 30 seconds for everyone
Yep.
to just think, and then
Yep.
Sorry.
No worries.
And just also for information, we are now on the Miro board. You can, if you're still on it, you can scroll down to the second working session. If but, so yeah, please, David.
Okay. So maybe just stepping back a little bit more than just talking about say B-sides, which is kind of a content orientation. When I think about the kinds of things that communities can do, knowledge sharing, content sharing is kind of what I think of as kind of foundational or a base level, right? So what we're kind of considering here are ways that the community can contribute and create shared knowledge, right? The next level up from that, I think in terms of creating tools that build on frameworks, right? It's co-innovation, right? Which is a little bit more structured kind of relationship that you can create within a community. And then the last level in terms of what's possible is really co-creating value together, right? Doing projects together and stuff along these lines. So I've been involved in a number of different communities, and they all start around content. They all start around knowledge sharing and trying to cohere around common interests, right? So I definitely think that that's the first level of maturity that makes things possible. The other areas around that Danielle and I have been looking at is kind of that second level around co-innovation and creating tools that build on the community's ability to interact with each other and create value together. And then, you know, that last one that, you know, we're interested in is the ability to co-create stuff. So that's the way I kind of think about it. We started obviously around sharing our thoughts, right? Just to try to get on the same page with others in the community around the things that we're thinking, and, you know, look forward to potentially seeing other ways that we can contribute.
And do you have any, like, based on that, because obviously you're writing on your blog, on your Medium. I don't know if you have any specific ideas on how that could, you know, would it be interesting to publish on a B-sides kind of channel on Boundaryless?
Oh yeah, there's no question, right? That you guys have a large following, and you're communing interest in the platform, the ecosystem space, which you know, we're interested in as well. So by all means, we're very interested in publishing through those channels, right? And expanding awareness of some of our ideas, right? But you know, we're also interested in kind of, you know, collaborating and melding those ideas into what the rest of the community is doing, and finding ways to work together.
Yeah, no, yeah, I meant also more from, because I don't know if you have your own channel, you know, you might be you know, do you want to double post? Yeah, like that's more like a
I think yeah, we'll be posting on it through our channels and other channels, and you know, I see you know, that is just a very it's another channel. It's a way to share and cohere around ideas. So absolutely, I can see us, you know, writing content for the platform design toolkit community exclusively, or cross-publishing, or whatever. Totally flexible. Yeah.
And there seem to be some other ideas that people have added in post-its. So maybe if someone just take the floor and describe what you have put.
Rez, I think we're speaking of you.
So I thought about the blog post. So when I, for example, read the content from David or Danielle or others, I jot down ideas that probably I would like to co-create and maybe write something together that could be related to platform design toolkit. So this could be maybe just an example, an experiment to write something at 2-3 hands, and then have it as an incentive for others to jump in idea. That's one, really something just came out of my mind. And the other one, in terms of projects, I don't know the timeline how it could fit, but sometimes I could see a platform or a project that I could see a fit for a canvas in the platform design toolkit I would like to test, but I would like to test with others. I know it's like a time or resources constraints, but I would probably happy to allocate a bit of time together, then create this co-creation testing experience. That's the truth of it. That's all.
So this is more in like the tools, the canvases, and these things.
Yeah, one was for the tools, and one is the blog post content.
Okay, so maybe there are some other ideas here. I don't know if anyone wants to.
Who wrote down illustrations?
This was some previous ideas that we had put.
Oh, because that would be great.
So
Some visual.
I move it here. So
nice.
I added scenarios in the way that, like, changing also, creating like stories about what can be like the future, in order to make it more tangible, and more so using like the storytelling to create like scenarios of what can be in the future.
I'm thinking that a lot of what's been happening in the platform design could be very amenable to the pattern language way of expressing things. And I wonder if it's the same, if you see it as the same or different than scenarios. But
well, you know, in general, I think we have an angle in this research that I think we need to keep in mind. You know, that is the angle of trying to understand how the systems are changing around our practices of organizing at scale. So that's more or less the angle of this research. Now we want to investigate what does it mean to organize at scale in the future. That's more or less the angle that we are keeping. No, so for example, if you listen to the podcast, you know that. And the other thing that I wanted to add is that it's not, you know, I know, and I think we understand very well that there are when we have a community and somebody facilitating the community, there are issues in, you know, finding the right branding equilibrium, let's say. There are issues regarding to ownership. And I think we as an organization are very keen into looking into how evolve our organizational model to be able to give more ownership to the community. But one thing that I want to stress, I think that was also the core of the decision of opening this B-side provocation to the community, is that we realize that at the moment, sense making, as we understand it, it goes a lot through words. It goes through conversations, through language, essentially. And conversations, I mean, in the written form, like blogs, which are essentially conversation with yourself, and podcasting and videos, because they offer a space for conversational sense making. So this is the intent that we had when we said, since we know that sense making is, for us, is flowing through conversations, we want to open this for the community, like a provocation and like a nudging the community to jump into conversational sense making. So that was the intent that we had when we thought about the B-sides.
What I'm trying to say is that this resonates with me, and but though you were working with diagrams a lot in the toolkit itself, so there was a hybrid language visual thing there already. And I saw somebody put card games, and I'd like to hear more about that. But it seems to me that, okay, I put concept maps because it's another language visual hybrid, right? The disposition of the concept map is meaningful in a way that the words in it, beyond the words in it. And a concept map is more of a collective object than an individual object or a dyadic object, the way a conversation can be. But I think that what I think we're trying to do is explore the space of possible organizations. And exploring a space, Guglielmo spoke about scenarios. I think there is a space for a catalog of configurations, and whether they're expressed visually, language, both, up to a point. But we're trying to do a kind of défrichage en français.
Decrypting.
No, it's more looking around, exploration, and finding.
But you're
finding the forms it takes.
If you're familiar with the PDT, as you will, we have already created pattern libraries. So I totally agree. And I think when David said, brought up this idea of tools, I think this is crucial. So for example, David and Danielle developed this prototype for using spiral dynamics as an intent definition for platform thinking. If I understand well, David, I hope so. But I would love to see that prototype as a tool. And I told David, why don't we use the same visual language that we have on PDT to prototype this tool? So this would be a shared branding experiment, okay? So I think we are all very conscious that here we have one organization that started this process years ago, and now it's into research, and is trying to find a way to get this into a collective process. So I think we are really getting into that, and we really need to understand what are the issues, and we need to solve those issues to unleash these decrypting of language, as you said, to some extent, this exploration of language that we are doing together.
Yeah.
And this weaving together of already existing diverse languages.
Yeah, definitely. That's. I think this is emerging very strongly by quoting spiral dynamics on one hand, thinking about process thinking on the other. So yeah, totally.
So
Can I mention mine? Because I put one too, because it's something that I have in my mind for a while, because we are dealing with so many new terms and frameworks and mindsets and new ways of thinking. And I believe we need to have some ways of playing with this, like in a safe way. Like that's why I put the card games. And I don't know if you are familiar with Cards Against Humanity. And I'm thinking create something like Cards Pro ecosystem, something like that, right? To create something in this sense, in a way to play with this. And that's why my idea with card games.
I think that's brilliant. I love it.
Stina,
maybe less cruel.
Stina, you have to polish us out of the call.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for engaging in this today. And of course, we set a little bit too ambitious goals here. So what we will do is that we will follow up we have our Discord channel, and I think we are already engaging in some local experiments in that space. So we can continue and we can draw on the conversation that we have today to try to collect feedback on the actual process, probably in a follow-up to the call, because we didn't have time to.
Yeah, it's very important, I think, to stress the fact that the Discord, the channel is really ramping up in terms of conversation. It was an experiment for us that so far we have been using Telegram, and we said, okay, let's use Discord. It's a little bit more structured for the conversation on the white paper, and this is really interesting. So if you really want to contribute, this is becoming the place to be. If you don't have access yet, just write us an email, and we're gonna send you the link to join. That's where most of the conversation is happening at the moment.
Yeah.
On the research.
So we and again, we are not trying to make it to be very directive about it. So we try to keep it an open space that people can also, go ahead and exchange with each other in the community. And like I was mentioning with Marc-Antoine and David and Danielle have also been involved. We've been testing out Ideal Loom as a way to collect insights. So we're still doing that for the podcast episodes a bit to see what comes out. So probably we can create some new channels also for the tools that Renzo already suggested to exchange some ideas. So we will come back to you through Discord on these things. Thanks so much for all your inputs and all your ideas and the rich conversations. The next call will be on the 12th of June. So you can note it in your agendas. We keep the same time for those calls. And again, if you have feedback on how we can make these calls better, you please also share. So. And for the event, sense-making event follow-up, the team will be in touch with those who already expressed interest. And if you feel like jumping on the board, again, you can reach out to us through Discord to express interest in this. But you will hear from us. Probably that's the message for now. That's it.
Can I propose just a word as a checkout? So what is the word that we are leaving with in our mind after these 2 hours of conversation?
Let's do the round. So Stina, you start.
I would say more bandwidth. I feel like my internet is handicapped.
Well, I will just use my spot to say happy birthday to Stina, because it's her
birthday to Stina.
Thank you. So I take the left one. Luca is left to me on the screen.
That's a very hard call. I don't know. I really don't know, because I have many words in my mind. I would be just conversations. So this is something that is really connecting us. I know it's obvious, but it's what's a lot.
For me, reflections, quite easy. And happy birthday.
I don't know too. I love the breakout room. That for me will be the the word.
Meets creating curiosity.
Cool.
Crafting alignment.
Exploration.
Diverse ideation.
I would just say that feel like we're building momentum, right? Feel like the community is gaining strength.
I say a soundtrack because I liked how we began, and I think we need a track to end. And I think we are making a sound and we are creating a track. So soundtrack.
Okay, I think we are all more or less.
Melanie?
I jumped in late, but I really like the play part. I think that that's a great addition.
Ville and Julia, I think.
Yeah, for me, new people, new ideas. Good.
For me, if you enjoy the road, the process, you get to the destination.
Good.
Kasaba, I don't know if you already said something, but
I'm here on the wind, so I don't know if you can hear me. So thank you for having me in this call. I was a little silent, but in the next one I will be more active, I promise. Thank you.
I think Hendro is the last one from what I captured.
Yeah, I actually said diverse ideations, which
sorry.
is very interesting. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry with the group, the breakup, group, because I was not able to access the Miro until, I was asked to send me one. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
After a while, I rejoined the conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Homework for everyone to sign up, get a Miro account, and explore the board.
And subscribe to the podcast.
Of course.
And share it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So,
Okay,
ciao.
And have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, guys.